Joining us today is Dr. Franco Taverna, who is a teaching stream professor in the human biology program at the University of Toronto. We first met Dr. Taverna in our Introduction to Neuroscience course last year in HMB 200. And besides being busy with teaching, he also directs a soccer club, which he told us about in class. We are super happy to have you here today, and welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
As your first professor who is on the show, could you tell us about what it's like being a professor at U of T?
It's really wonderful working at a university like the University of Toronto. As you know, we've all been told and reminded over and over again, it's one of the top universities in the world. So it's nice to be there. You're surrounded by excellent students in every course, very, very motivated. Lots of them, and likewise, excellent professors and staff. So overall, the experience there is very good. We have very good support with respect to teaching, and I think that came through at least on our end as professors in this tough time with the pandemic. So many professors had to shift to online teaching and learning that they'd never done before. They had no idea how to do it, and a lot was invested in trying to help them, do that. So for many reasons, it's really a wonderful experience. I mean, it's a beautiful, area of the city, nice campus and stuff like that. So there's so many positives of working at the University of Toronto.
For those of us undergrads who are interested in becoming a professor one day, could you tell us about your path to becoming a professor and what got you interested in teaching?
I think I was in at your age, and as you approach graduation in the next couple of years, I was probably in the same boat as many students that I realize many students are. They are approaching graduation. They're unsure of what to do. They've enjoyed their science degree. They like doing science. They can, see potential things that they can do with science, maybe doing, becoming a scientist or whatever it is, but they're not really sure. And I was like that, and I applied for some graduate spots and got lucky and got accepted into one. And it was in a lab that was doing neuroscience research. It was more molecular, more about receptors and structure and function. So it was really molecular biology, protein biochemistry, but it happened to be about, proteins related to the brain. So it was a little serendipitous, how I got into the topic in the field that I like. So I just started doing this master's work. That went well. I got felt that I wanted to continue, so I continued on to do a PhD. The rest is sort of history. There's a quite a traditional, typical path from when you're in your PhD to when you're to become a professor. It's most people end up doing what's called a postdoctorate research. It's just a continuation of research. So you end up having a ton of experience in research. I got fortunate. There was some opportunities to teach some courses while I was doing my postdoc. I didn't get to teach when I was doing my PhD, but more when I was a postdoc. Because I was affiliated with the University of Toronto, there was opportunities to TA, there was opportunities to teach course modules, there's even opportunities to teach entire courses, like for instance, in place of professors that were on sabbatical or something like that. So there's lots of those opportunities out there, and I got one. I got multiple of those over 2 or 3 years, and that's what kind of really made me think about teaching more and more. So as I was still pursuing science and doing science research, I did apply for some research type professorship jobs. I didn't get any at the time, or I didn't get any yet at the time. And then I applied for one in the teaching stream and got it. So I took it and went on to start teaching full time. And that's when my lab research ended. So that was my path, very similar to any path to a professorship.
I know people say that it's really difficult to become a professor, and the chances of you actually getting that position, that permanent position at a university, the chances are really low. What would you say about that?
I would say that it kind of depends. The research path and perhaps now even the teaching stream path, which is, kind of getting more widespread. I mean, we're at U of T, which is a strongly research university. So up until fairly recently, there hasn't been very many teaching stream professors at U of T. It's grown a lot in the last, 5 years, 5 or 10 years or so. But that's not the case in many universities or colleges across North America. So often I tell students, you're more likely to catch a fish if you cast a wide net. So if you are thinking about proceeding towards research or a teaching career in the future, it is your best odds are to try to pursue your opportunities along the way, masters, PhD, postdocs in different places, at least in the country, perhaps in North America, and even around the world. Once you start casting that wider net, the number of opportunities you're willing to pursue, whether it's postdocs or research or teaching stream possibilities, goes way up, right? If you're willing to apply for jobs anywhere in North America, I think your chances get way better. If you're trying to get a job at U of T, that's where your odds are really, really low because there's very few positions and the number of people applying to U of T is enormous from all around the world for the reasons that I said before, why it's so nice working here. People all around the world recognize that, and we get outstanding people applying to become professors here.
You mentioned that before you applied to the teaching stream position, you ended up with a lot of experience in research. Do most people who go into research, like grad school, postdoc, is it like typical to apply to a teaching job, or do some people just focus on research for the rest of their lives?
I would say most people end up focusing on research the rest of their lives. Now, let me back that up a little bit. Those who stay and want to continue to do research compared to teaching, the majority stay in research. They'll end up with a research position in universities or in companies, biotech companies, pharmaceutical companies, or whatever it might be, and they'll do research. There's tons of opportunities there, and there's growing all the time. And Toronto's a great hub for this. There's lots of biotech and entrepreneurship and innovation, medical engineering, bioengineering, all sorts of stuff going on. So there's way more positions in that area than there is in teaching. And, even outside of, traditional straight research, your PhD in science, in genetics or in molecular biology or in neuroscience is a very valuable asset that can give you, an advantage or make you an excellent candidate for many different kinds of positions outside of the traditional ones you think about, right? There's lots. There's things like more business-oriented positions, perhaps in science companies, but you're not on the bench as a scientist, discovering the vaccine. You're, on the business side or on the law side, patents. There's lots and lots of opportunities that having a PhD in science makes you a great candidate for those things. When you pursue a PhD, one of the more likely paths you're going to end up with is as a scientist or as a research professor, which is the vast majority of professors at U of T. And then the other more likely avenue is doing science or not doing science out in the business world, right? Just out in the regular job force, which remains the largest, possibility of the number of jobs that are out there. A life science graduate is going to end up in that traditional, most likely going to end up in that traditional sort of job force, right? But your education and your training and the way you think like a scientist is very, very helpful, right? Evidence-based, all that kind of stuff.
Switching gears now a little bit, we do want to hear about your soccer team. So could you tell us a bit about your motivations and kind of what drives you to participate?
this happened a long time ago when my oldest kids, my first two kids, were just 4 or 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old, and getting involved in soccer. So like many people, we just joined the local soccer club, got involved very heavily in the soccer club, and even volunteered to be one of the directors, one of the, part of the leadership of the entire club. A few years after that, really on a whim from a news story that I saw about kids with disabilities playing hockey, I thought about if that playing soccer would be something easier than hockey for a kid with disability. That was what was going on in my mind. We should do this. We should try to offer soccer programs for kids with disabilities in our club. There wasn't any. I didn't know of any anywhere in the region. So with that thought, we started a program for kids with disabilities, and it after 2 or 3 years of it being relatively small, it's just started growing very, very rapidly. We got the idea of applying for funding to support this program through different agencies like Ontario Trillium Foundation, Canadian Tire Jumpstart, and a few others. And they were really, really receptive to what we were doing. We really found a niche meeting a need that was out there. There's hundreds of thousands of kids with disabilities that never ever get a chance to play any sport, and there's hardly any programs out there in the whole province. So this really found a nice niche. So what started out as something very small has become something really neat that provides a ton of opportunities for us to learn. Great opportunities for volunteers. Some of my students in my courses in the past have come out and become volunteers. They've even done research with our program, trying to figure out ways of making the program better and introducing different aspects to it. Adapting it for children with cerebral palsy, or adapting it for children with autism spectrum disorder, something like that. And that's been, a really wonderful experience for us.
It's so cool that two major projects in your life, like your experience in neuroscience and also the soccer club, kind of just like melded together in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really have, because, and then, I talked earlier about, the science way of thinking. I can't tell you how beneficial that was in this program, because we've written and been awarded grants for the program, for development, for keeping the program very low cost for participants, for training volunteers, all these neat things. And that grant process is exactly the same as writing a grant to do a research project. And so my experience there was a huge benefit, right? Being able to write it, knowing how to write it in certain ways. So that's a great example where you learn a skill doing science and you apply it in a very different thing. It's the exact skill. And my students, the same thing. The students are attracted to it because we have these projects, some of them straight research projects that allow them to apply science and psychology, kinesiology, physiology, but to a recreational activity, right? And in many cases, a recreational activity they really love. We got this student soccer players who get attracted to it, to come and volunteer and to see how they get involved.